Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar about counseling and giving advice. My name is Charles. I am going to be your host for today. I hope you are all doing well, that you've had a fantastic week so far, and I hope you all have a little bit of energy left to make that push over the next couple days before we get to the weekend. For those of you who are here with us live, I would like to kindly ask you to let me know how our connection is just by going ahead and saying something in our chat. So if you are here with us live right now, go ahead, type something in the chat. You can say hi, hello, yes, I can hear you, or maybe let me know what your favorite movie is. If you're wondering, my favorite movie is About Time. So, but besides that, I hope you are all doing well. It seems that our connection is pretty good right now. That is awesome to see. We have a bunch of people here today. Hello to everyone. Let me just quickly introduce myself if you do not know me yet. As you know already, I am Charles. I am one of the Tutlo tutors here on the platform, and I am one of the webinar hosts as well, which is why you see me here today. But beyond that, to get to know me a little bit, here are a few fun facts about me. I personally really enjoy food. I am a huge food person. I love coffee and I love books. So if we have any of those three things in common, let me know. Type something in the chat. But beyond that, I also live in the Philippines, so I am on the other side of the world where it is hot all the time. And I know in Poland it's beginning to get a little cold, and I am here enjoying the hot 30-degree weather every day. So we are on opposite sides of the weather spectrum. Before we get into anything else, I just want to quickly give you all a heads up of what we are going to be doing today. So for the next maybe 1 to 2 minutes, I will quickly just explain what today's webinar is about so that you know what to expect during our time together. As I do so, if you need to grab a snack, a drink, get a notebook, go ahead and do so. And then we will get into our main material in the next maybe 2 minutes. So let me just quickly explain what exactly are we talking about today. Well, obviously, with giving advice and counseling, we are going to talk about talking to others. Our main focus for today's webinar is being able to talk to other people, whether those are our friends or a professional or someone else in our lives. We want to talk about how we can talk to other people, and through that, we will discuss where to go. If you want to seek some professional advice and some professionals in this field, we will talk about a few different places, or I guess a few different people you can go to. But beyond that, one of the greatest parts of getting advice, counseling, and talking to people is being there for our friends or being there for people who want some advice. So we will also spend some time talking about how to be there for others. So we're going to talk all about, like we said earlier, talking to others, whether that is us needing to talk to someone or someone needing to talk to us. Life is crazy, and we were not designed to do life alone. We were designed to do life with other people, whether that's your family, your friends, or a professional. It is a great way to be able to deal with our problems when we get to deal with it with other people. So this is the structure of today's webinar. But before we get into the material, let me give you all a few quick reminders. The first reminder I would like to give you is just how long we will be here. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, our webinars are around 30 minutes long. That is about a half hour. We started today at around 6 p.m. So we will finish at around 6:30. So in the next 20 to 25 minutes, we will finish. As we are in our webinar, our chat will be open. You can make comments about what we learn, participate in activities, and even go ahead and ask questions. We will even have a Q&A, a question and answer, at the end of today's webinar, where if you have a question, feel free to ask it then, and I will do my best to give you as good of an answer. Everything's explained. I see a few more people have joined us. Hello to you if you just came into our webinar. Let's go ahead, dive into our topic today about counseling and giving advice. But first, let's approach the idea of counseling. So the first half of today's webinar, let's talk about counseling and what it is. Counseling is explained as the provision of assistance and guidance in resolving personal, social, or psychological problems. So if we are talking about counseling, we are talking about the provision of guidance or the provision of advice. So provision simply means supplying or providing. So if you talk about counseling, it's just providing assistance and guidance in resolving, which means fixing, personal, social, or psychological problems. So with the idea of counseling, there needs to be a problem to be fixed or a problem to be solved. And like I mentioned earlier, life was not designed for us to do it alone. Sometimes our problems can be crazy. Some problems might be bigger than others, but sometimes we need a space to talk to someone. So with these three problems, let's focus on what they each mean. So the problems that we can face, like I mentioned earlier, are quite a lot. There are some problems that are really, really big and some small problems, but they can be categorized into these three areas. Your personal problems are just concerning one's private life, your relationships, your emotions. So if you're experiencing a personal problem and you get some counseling, you are trying to get some guidance and assistance with a problem in your private life. Maybe a problem in a relationship, a problem at your career, a problem in your family. That happens all the time, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. So sometimes we need to talk about our personal problems. Or it could be our social problems. So your social problems are simply relating to society. This could be your social problems with friends or your social problems at work. Social problems maybe with a relationship with your boss. And the last type of problem is psychological. Quite difficult to explain, but you can divide it into psychological. Psychological. Psychological problems are simply of or affecting the mind. These are related to someone's emotions or your mental state. And this happens a lot. If you look at the statistics, problems that focus on your psychological aspect happen all the time. Whether that is with depression, anxiety, worry, or stress, everyone deals with a little bit of psychological problems. These can result because of your personal problems. You can be having some personal problems and it will affect your psychological problems as well. And the idea of going ahead and getting some counseling is just so you can take care of what we call your mental health. Mental health is simply a person's condition with regard to their emotional health. I know it might be kind of crazy to talk about mental health and emotional health because if you think of it, you don't get to see these problems, right? If you're having a psychological problem and your mental health is suffering, you don't see it. So it's hard to be able to fix it. Compared to if I fall and I break my arm, it's obvious that my arm is broken, so I need some help. Same thing if you have some mental health things to deal with. It could be as small as a personal problem or as big as a bigger personal problem. We want to take care of our mentals. Take care of your mental health is super, super important. Like I mentioned, life was not designed to be alone. And when we experience these problems, one of the best things we can do for ourselves is to talk through it with other people. Yes, we could talk through it with our friends, our family, but there are some resources available to us that would be more in the professional standard. And there are 3 different places you can go, or 3 different kinds of professionals you can see. The first one is probably the most common. That is a therapist. A therapist is a person trained to give guidance on problems. These are people who study, they go to school to be able to help people with their problems. So if you go to a therapist, you will be able to talk about your problems, whether that is personal, social, or psychological, and they will do their best to give you guidance on these problems. If you are unfamiliar with the word guidance, it simply means advice. That's the idea of today, talking through our problems, giving advice or information that will help solve a problem. So if you're going to talk to a therapist, you're going to talk to a person who is trained to help fix your problems. But there are other people you can go to beyond just a therapist. You can go to someone who we call a psychologist. A little bit of a different word, but a psychologist is an expert in the human mind. So you can think therapist is the very basic professional person you can seek. A psychologist is the next level. A psychologist is someone who is an expert in the human mind. So that means your emotions, your behavior, the things that you do. A psychologist is an expert in these things. So if you feel like you have some really big emotional problems, or you might have some behavior problems you want to go and get some help with, you would seek a psychologist because these are the experts. They know the human mind really, really well. Compared to a therapist, therapists are amazing. They can help with your problems. But a psychologist is even a little bit better because they are experts in the human mind. It's the same thing. If you go to a doctor, there are many different kinds of people in the health world. You have your nurses, your doctors, and you have your specialist doctors, right? So a specialist doctor, they're good with your heart. For example, a heart doctor, they are experts in the heart. Same thing, a psychologist is an expert in the human mind and the way our mind functions. But there are even some bigger cases where we have to move up to the next level. So you start off at a therapist, a psychologist helps as well, but there's even someone we call a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor specializing in mental problems. So while a psychologist is an expert in the human mind, your emotions and your behavior, a psychiatrist is someone even more specialized in mental problems. It happens a lot. Like I mentioned, everyone can deal with a little bit of mental problems in their life. It doesn't mean we're crazy, right? We are not crazy. It just means we have some stress, anxiety, depression, worry. It happens all the time. So we can go ahead and get some help. It's one of the best things we can do for ourselves. Go talk to a friend or family member. Even seek some professionals, whether that would be a therapist, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. We have been talking a lot about the idea of giving advice. So let's backpedal a bit to that word. What does advice mean? Advice is simply guidance or recommendation that is given to a person. So if you give advice, you are giving guidance or recommendations to how to help a person's problem. Or if you are getting advice from a friend, family member, or a professional, you are getting guidance or recommendations from that person, whether that is to deal with a personal issue, a social issue, or a psychological issue. But like I mentioned earlier, we need help sometimes, right? There are people we need to talk to. But a great thing about life is we also get to be there for others. Beyond just going ahead and seeking help for other people, like we mentioned earlier, it's great to talk to a friend. So what happens when you are that friend that your friend wants to talk to. What can we do? All right, obviously we are not professionals, right? Not all of us have studied the human mind or have become experts in emotions or mental problems. But there are things we all can do to give as good of advice to our friends or our family members. The first thing we can start off doing is just do our best to relate to them. If you are unfamiliar with the word relate, it simply means to connect to them, have a connection with them. You can do this in two ways. The first one is what we call sympathy. When you express sympathy, you express sorrow for one's circumstance. So if your friend went through a breakup with their partner, you would express sympathy. You will be sad for your friend because your friend is hurting. Or if your family member passed away and you're talking to your brother or sister, express some sympathy with them. Express sorrow or sadness for what happened. Because sometimes the best thing we can do for someone is just be with them, right? If they are in a problem, give them our sympathy. Express sorrow for them. And sometimes we can practice what we call empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share someone's feelings. So let's backtrack. Remember that friend that got into a relationship with someone and they broke up. Express some empathy with them. Think to yourself, what would it be like if I was broken up with? Well, I would be sad. I would be hurt. I would want to cry. So what should I do? I should express that to my friend. Go ahead and think, all right, this is very sad, so I will be sad with you. But we can also do this on the opposite side, right? If somebody is happy, we can show some empathy with them. But in the relation of advice, go ahead, try to understand their problem. Imagine yourself in their problem. And then go ahead and move on to step number 2. A great thing you can do, go ahead, share some experience. Experience simply means an event that leaves an impression on someone. So, for example, let's say that friend that got in a breakup is talking to you. Well, sometimes there is no solution to that, right? I can't tell someone to just be happy because it's hard when you're sad. So I'll use my experience. I will say, yeah, I went through a breakup too a little bit ago and it hurts. It's sad, but it gets better, right? Use some experience. Or if a family member of your friend passed away and you recently had that as well, or you've had that before, use some experience. It's sad, it hurts, but it's going to get better. You're going to be okay. That's some of the best things we can do. Because like I said, sometimes there is no quick solution, right? I cannot just tell you what to do. If you're having some problems, if it's a social, personal, or a psychological problem, I can't just tell you, be happy, just go ahead, it's not gonna hurt. Sometimes it's sad. So I can maybe use experience if I do have it. But the best thing we can do, if we're giving advice and talking through someone's problem with them, go ahead and actively listen. What does it mean if I actively listen? And what's the difference with listening? Because actively listen means an act of listening carefully to everything. I don't know about you, but sometimes there are times, I will listen to a little bit and then I will forget everything else because I understand what someone is saying. If I practice active listening, I will listen to everything and then I will respond. I don't want to miss the little details. I will do my best to listen to everything. Practicing active listening is a great way to be able to help people. So remember those 3 things we can do if we are going ahead and giving some advice to someone, or we are just being there for a friend experiencing some problems. Go ahead and relate to them. Show some sympathy and empathy. Try using experience if you have experienced it before. And then go ahead and actively listen. I know we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of different things, a lot of vocabulary and things like that. And it was a heavy topic, I know. But let's go ahead and let us do some practice. So up on your screen, what we will do is a little incomplete sentence exercise where you are going to have a sentence where it is incomplete, and I will need you to choose the correct word that we learned today to fill in the blank. Here is sentence number 1. A blank is an expert in the human mind. So from what we have talked about today, someone who is an expert in the human mind, are they a therapist or a psychologist? Remember, we talked about 3 different kinds of professionals when it comes to counseling and mental health. So which one is an expert in the human mind from what we've talked about today? Are therapists experts in the human mind, or are psychologists experts in the human mind? So let me know in the chat. Type it out if you want to participate. Would you say letter A, therapists, or letter B, psychologists? I will give everyone maybe 10 more seconds, maybe 15 at most, to think it through and let me know in the chat, what do you think is the proper answer? Are we going to say therapists or psychologists? If you went with letter B or you thought of a psychologist, that is the correct answer. Because remember, a psychologist, experts in the human mind. Therapists, while they might know a lot about the human mind, a therapist is someone who is just trained to give guidance on problems that you might experience. Now, we talked about the different problems we can go ahead and experience, right? So here is sentence number 2. Blank problems deal specifically with someone's mental state. And we have 2 types of problems, psychological and personal. So let me know in the chat, what do you think the proper answer is here? Should we say psychological problems deal specifically with someone's mental state? Or would we say personal problems deal with specifically someone's mental state? Now, while both of these are close, they are very, very similar, look at the word specifically. And which of these 2 options best fits this sentence? If we're talking about specifically a person's mental state, would we say that those would be psychological problems or personal problems? What do you think? Let me know. Type it out in the chat, and I'll give you all maybe 10 more seconds, and then I will go ahead, give the answer, and we will move to the last portion of our webinar today. As we are down to our last few minutes together, the whole point of this practice, just to go ahead and make sure you are able to, 1, remember some of the stuff you learned, and 2, able to use some of the things we've learned. If you went ahead and thought of letter A, psychological problems, that is correct. While yes, a personal problem might involve your mental state, specifically, if it's only mental state, those are your psychological problems. So I hope that was a little fun exercise that you were all able to participate in. I see all your answers in the chat. Thank you for that. Awesome job, everyone. Let me give you all a few quick reminders before we move to the last portion of our time together. Remember how to deal with our problems. Dealing with our problems, it's awesome to be able to go ahead and talk it out with people, friends, family, or professionals, whether those are personal, social, or psychological problems. And then remember, we talked about the people who can help. Our family and friends are awesome. We can even get professionals like a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist. And then remember how we can help. If we have to give advice, if we have to give some guidance, what can we do? Yes, we can go ahead, relate, go ahead and even use some experience if you have some, and actively listen. I hope that was a lot of fun for all of you, but I want to make sure everything was clear as well. So right now we have maybe the next couple minutes for a quick Q&A, a quick question and answer. This is the portion of our time together where if you have a question, feel free to ask it now, and I will do my best to give you as good of an answer as I can. So If something was unclear and you want me to explain it more, or you just have a question you would like to ask, feel free to do so. As we are waiting for any questions, we are going to do a couple polls. Up on your screen, you quickly see a poll that asks if you found today's webinar useful. I would love to hear from you. Did you learn something today? Did you benefit from our webinar? Overall, was this useful? If so, my mission is accomplished and I am glad. We still have maybe a minute for another question if anyone has it. If not, that's okay. I won't force any questions. We will just run one last poll. It asks if you would like to join us again for a similar event in the future. Would you consider joining us for another webinar in the near future? It could be, for example, like a topic today with some everyday English, but we also do things like social English, general English, travel, or even business English. So find a topic that you would enjoy, and of course, we would love to see you there. I don't see any questions in the chat, and our time is about up, so we will go ahead and finish for today. But before we do go, a quick reminder is that we are on social media. You can find us on places like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We post content on our social medias to keep everyone updated, of course, about anything that happens here. But beyond that, we even go ahead and post some videos, like learning tips and some fun facts. So check us out, and I promise you won't regret it. That's going to be all from me. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you had a blast, as much or even more fun than I did. Until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you again soon. Maybe we will get to see each other through another webinar in the future, or even through a lesson on the platform. Until next time, take care, everyone, and goodbye for now.